So, good afternoon and welcome to St. Peter's Hove. I'm Father Alexander, and here we are again on our 224th step in our walking tour through the Bible, considering the book of Ecclesiasticus, Ben Sirach, and starting at chapter 3, verse 17, and then going into chapter 4 up to verse 10. Now, as I said before, Ecclesiasticus is sort of a high handbook of Vade Mecum, a sort of how to live a good life book. Um, and the first thing he's talked about, the last thing he talked about, was your duty to your parents. And so he puts that first, the very, very important thing you've got to do. And that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Because it's in the Ten Commandments and it's very much a Jewish thing as well. It would have been very, very strongly drummed into people in that culture. Looking after your parents was the most important thing you could do. Next thing he says is most unusual. Most unusual. He says, my child, be gentle in carrying out your business and you'll be better loved than a lavish giver. The greater you are, the more humbly you should behave, and then you will find favor with the Lord. For great though the power of the Lord is, he accepts the homage of the humble. The author is extolling humility. Now, this is exceptionally strange because he says the humble are more loved by God than lavish givers. Well, hang on a sec. This was written in Egypt 200 AD when the king was Ptolemy the benefactor, that is, the doer of good. Now, what do you mean by a benefactor? You mean a guy who spends his funds on public projects. In the Roman Empire and in the Hellenic world before the Roman Empire, it was expected for great men to spend a lot of money on grands projets, great projects. That is to say, if you were rich, then you endowed libraries, you endowed bathhouses, and you erected triumphal arches, and you made sure your name was on all of them, written in big letters. Then, of course, when you fell from favour and you were executed, people would come along and they would deface your inscriptions and they would burn your statues or tear down your statues and break them up and things like that, melt them down if they were bronze. And that was called damnatio memoriae, the damnation of memory. So you'd be cancelled. Now, that was the ideal. And indeed, to make a great name for yourself was the ideal. And if you look in the Hebrew Bible, it's clear Solomon made a great name for himself. He stamped his name all over Jerusalem. So did King David, thanks to his victories, make a great name for himself. Hezekiah, Josiah, they made great names for themselves. But this man is saying the opposite. The greater you are, the more humbly you should behave. In other words, now you can't really say that Solomon was humble or King David was humble, but he's saying the greater you are, the more humbly you should behave. And then you will find favor with the Lord. For great though the power of the Lord is, he accepts the homage of the humble. To be gentle in carrying out your business, and then you'll be better loved than a lavish giver. In other words, even if you are a gentle, humble sort of soul, you will be more loved than the sort of person who builds public bathhouses and puts up triumphal arches to their names and is a general benefactor to the public. So this represents a complete change of gear and goes very much against the culture of the times. What brought this about? It's strange. I don't understand why it came about. Was it because Judaism had become a more and more, if you like, privatized, more something you did with a book at home rather than something you did out in public, in Egypt at least, where the Jews were, they're very numerous, a minority? I don't know. But this is very much in line with what Jesus has to say in the New Testament. There's no doubt about that. Very much in line. Now, those lines are very important, I think, because humility is a Christian virtue. It is the greatest of Christian virtues in many ways, because if you look at the life of Jesus, it was a humble, unassuming life. It's hard for us to be humble because we're not really taught how to be humble. I think being humble is a matter of not pushing yourself forward, not talking about yourself incessantly, not being pushy, not being stuck up, being gentle, as he says here, being, I would put it this way, being affable. Humble people are affable. They can talk to anybody and anybody can talk to them. And even if they are very important people, for whatever reason, they can still be extremely humble and approachable. Now, the author then, I think, rather goes to ruin it by then going on about intellectual humility and essentially saying that intellectual ambition is not a good thing. Do not try to understand things that are too difficult for you. Well, I don't think I would ever say that to anybody. As a former teacher, I would never have said that to a child. Oh, look, this is far too difficult for you. Mathematics is a bit difficult. So I think you should do something else. No, we don't say that to people nowadays. Nowadays, we say, be ambitious for the higher gifts, along with St. Paul. So if you find mathematics difficult, well, try harder, see what you can understand, and try and make some progress in some way. Do not try to understand things that are too difficult for you, or try to discover what is beyond your powers. Concentrate on what has been assigned to you. You've no need to worry over mysteries. Do not meddle with matters that are beyond you. What you've been taught already exceeds the scope of the human mind. For many have been misled by their own notions. Wicked presumption warped their judgment. What he's saying is, know your place. We don't go along with this. Now, I don't think it's a good idea to confuse humility with knowing your place. And what is your place? Well, your place is that of a baptized person, isn't it? Your place is a place of a baptized and anointed person. God has given you the universe so you may understand it. So do everything you possibly can to understand everything that comes along. Study everything. Be intellectually ambitious. And the more intellectually ambitious you are, of course, the more you'll realize how limited your knowledge is, and the more you'll want to learn, and the more humble you'll be because you realize that you cannot possibly know it all. Okay? But I don't think we should use humility as a sort of a stick to beat people with, telling them, you're stupid, stay stupid. No, that's not what we do at all. So humility is not about keeping people down. Humility is rather about being gentle, being affable, and I think bringing people up, because it's pride that pushes people down, other people's pride. So let's not be proud. Well, then that's the next thing he goes on to talk about pride. Verse 26, a stubborn heart come to a bad end, he tells us. Well, that's true. And whoever dallies with danger will perish in it. A stubborn heart is weighed down with troubles. For the disease of the proud there is no cure. Well, indeed, he's right. Pride is the very worst of sins. He doesn't really go into why it's the very worst of sins, but he clearly sees it as a very bad thing. The heart of the sensible will reflect on parables, he says. An attentive ear is a sage's dream. Now, parables, as told by our blessed Lord, if we're sensible, we'll listen to those parables. If we're proud, we won't listen. So what's this? It's nothing to do with me. I can't be bothered. Let's not be proud in that way. And then finally, he goes on to so we've talked about love of parents, we've talked about humility against pride, and now he goes on to something else, love of the poor, charity to the poor. Whoever gives favors in return is mindful of the future. At the moment of falling, such a person will find support. My child, do not refuse the poor a livelihood. Do not tantalize the needy. Do not add sufferings to the sufferings of the hungry. Do not bait anyone in distress. So be kind to poor people. Almsgiving expiates sins. Incidentally, it's interesting, he's got this idea of the negative and the positive. We do bad things and we can do good things, and the good things can cancel out the bad things. The good things we do, and chief among them is almsgiving, will help not only help poor people, but will help us. It will cancel out our sins. Do not repulse a hard-pressed beggar, nor turn your face from the poor. Do not avert your eyes from the needy, or give no one occasion to curse you. For if someone curses you in distress, his maker will give ear to the imprecation. Gain the love of the community in the presence of the great, bow your head. To the poor, lend an ear, and courteously return the greeting. Save the oppressed from the hand of the oppressor, and do not be mean-spirited in your judgments. Be like a father to the fatherless, and as good as a husband to their mothers, and you will be like a child of the Most High, to the Most High, who will love you more than your own mother does. One thing that's interesting here is it's clear that the poor are to be found in the midst of the rich, or the relatively well off. The reader of this book, one assumes, is relatively well off in the sense that he can afford a book. And the poor are all around you. Now, in some parts of the world, you never notice the poor because they're so poor they don't come out much. They're almost invisible. But not here, in this society. The poor are everywhere. So be nice to them, return their greeting, listen to what they have to say, treat them as equals, is what he's saying. Well, okay, give them money. He's talking about almsgiving, but he's also talking about the respect we should have for our brothers and sisters. In other words, what he's saying is, okay, you've got this division, rich and poor, two classes of people, but in the end, it's just people. And you're a person, and the poor person is a person. So you're people, you're equals. There is difference between you, yes, but it's not that important difference. And I think that's very interesting and very useful. One of the things is that the trend towards gated communities in some parts of the world is a very bad trend because it shows that we should ghettoization of the rich, ghettoization of the poor. Get out of your ghetto, mix with your ordinary human beings, and then we get back to what he said at the beginning. My child, be gentle in carrying out your business. Be gentle. Be nice to all the people you meet. It's as simple as that. Hope that helps. It's interesting, isn't it? Bye for now. Bye.